Hi, welcome and thank you for coming. My name's Anthony Dunkley, and the video that you're about to see was recorded from a speech I made in India about a month ago at the end of April 2013. It's about my passion, which is a community of healing that we are founding, and it tells the story of how I recognized the need for this to happen, and also explains what can be done if we do join into community together. What can be actually done to change the world without persuasion or without forcing or confrontation, but by leading, by example. So I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you at the end.
Thank you. I'll try to go slowly. Please remind me if I'm going too fast. So, miracles are normal. Well, what is a miracle? Anybody got something to say? What is a miracle? Something that you thought couldn't happen to you and happened. Okay. Anybody else?
It's a wonderful event and unexpected and unexplainable at the moment.
A wonderful event that's unexplainable at the moment. I'm going to repeat this so we don't have to pass the microphone.
And also unexpected.
Unexpected
And unexplainable.
and unexplainable. An event that's unexpected and unexplainable.
And wonderful.
And wonderful. Thank you so much. Anybody else? An expression of reality and love. I love that.
Wow.
We are actually going to see a definition in a second, but I'd love to redefine it like that. That really works for me. Anybody else?
Something that happens, and it's not to be explained by physical laws.
Something that happens that is not to be explained by physical laws. Right. Thank you. And that's actually, I think, pretty spot on. I want to see if this works now.
Yeah, it's a miracle.
Yeah, it's a miracle. So it's a surprising and welcome event that is not explicable by natural or scientific laws.
The work of divine agency.
Well, I'm going to just put some dots on, if you can imagine a blank sheet of paper in your mind, I'm going to put some dots on the page, and I'm going to see if you can notice what shape they make. And this is a lot about noticing, because as we go through there are going to be little hints that are dots, and this is a story I'm going to tell, and this is what happened to me in real life. But before I go any further, I want to just mention something that I read in a book that I've just about 3/4 of the way through, called Radical Forgiveness. Has anybody read the book Radical Forgiveness? Yeah. It's written by a guy called Colin Tipping, and there's a charming story in there that is a great introduction of a couple who have a child, a 3-year-old girl, and the mother is pregnant, and they go to the hospital to deliver the new baby. And the birth is smooth and easy, and they're a little concerned about how the 3-year-old is going to accept the newborn. There's some fear of jealousy and some abreaction. And when they bring her home, she immediately says, I want to see the baby. And so they start to take her to the room, and she says, I want to go on my own. And they're a little bit uncomfortable with it, so they let her go into the room, and they put their ear to the door just to make sure that everything is okay. And they hear her say, baby, tell me about God, because I'm starting to forget. So that's kind of where we're coming from with this. This kind of sets the tone for what I'm about to say. And on the subject of miracles, I wonder if anybody knows, this might seem like an odd question, but there's a purpose to it. How many sperm are there in an average male ejaculate?
30 million or something?
3 million. 3 million sperm in an average male ejaculate. So when you consider the amount that goes into a handkerchief or a condom, and when you consider the period that a woman is actually fertile enough and that egg is prepared to receive that sperm, what do you say we multiply that 3 million by 10 and call it 30 million? Which is modest. I mean, we could claim more, but let's say 30 million. So the odds are 30 million to 1 that all of you were born. So does that make you a miracle or not? Well, of course, the other miracle is that you made all the right choices all through all those years to be in this place right now together. So what I'm proposing is that miracles are about noticing. And I was drawn to this line of inquiry because I started a new form of meditation about 5 years ago that I call quantum field meditation. And it was different than any other that I'd done before. Yeah, sorry about that. Ooh. Okay, it was different than any other meditation that I'd done before because with this particular one we would focus on a body sensation. And it wasn't about asking questions about that sensation, it was really just focusing almost sternly on that sensation, whether it was painful or pleasurable or just a tingle or feeling the weight of my elbow on the chair here. And what we found out was that with concentrated focus, that physical feeling would become a portal into a whole new realm. And we would do this meditation with several people, up to about 8 people. Works really well. And you can also do it over the telephone or on Skype, which we did a lot of, because I lived in Bali and we were meditating between Washington, D.C. and California and Europe. And what we were finding out was in the spaciousness of this meditation that there were so many synchronicities that were occurring. And we were seeing so many of the same things at the same time that it made me want to search more deeply and to ask questions about miracles, because this seemed like a miracle to me. So I set off back to Europe and decided that I'd get in my van, which I have a Volkswagen van that I keep in London, and this trip I decided to devote to seeing people on the way that I could ask this question: what is a miracle to you? And the first person that I went to see was a person that we'd meditated with in Brussels, and he's a relatively important man. His name is Bernard, and he's written several books. He was one of the he was the key man to develop the ECU, which was the European Currency Unit, which was the conversion system to the euro. He was one of the founders of the euro. He's been with the Bank of Belgium for several years, and he was also the man that unhinged the dollar from the gold standard. And he also wrote a book called The Club of Rome, which has just been released this year, which is about the demise of currency. So this may seem irrelevant for now, but it will begin to take its place. So just consider it a dot for now. I was excited to talk to him about miracles, so I went there with high expectations, and he had a wonderful bottle of wine and about 6 gorgeous cheeses on a cheese board, and we sat there, and it was an exquisite evening from a food point of view, and we talked about money, and he said something which I think is relevant, which is that we need to prepare another currency. And he actually took the example of the corn blight. He said if the whole world was eating corn and there was a disease, what would happen? And he said, just do know that before 2020, we're not going to have the system of currency that we have now. And just to check in, does anybody know what the word currency comes from?
Brief.
Does anybody know what the word currency comes from? Comes from the word corrente, correre. That means running or flowing. So money is actually meant to flow. And this is another dot. Money's not meant to stay still. It's not meant to be put in a bank and held onto. It's meant to keep moving. I was disappointed with my evening with him because he didn't really give me any answers about miracles, but he did give me a bunch of information that I didn't feel to be too relevant to my search. So I continued down to the Loire, where I have a friend who has a farm, and took a couple of days rest and rethought what I was going to do. And by the way, I'd by this time spoken to 20 or 30 people about miracles in the hope that I would write a book. But the answers that I got were never really very inspiring to me. And so after this visit with Bernard, I felt really quite dejected and despondent. But Vince, who I was staying with in the Loire, mentioned to me that if I was going down to Italy and I had time, that I should go to a place called Montségur. And the reason he said I should go to Montségur is because it's where the Cathars, which are were the highest sect of the Catholic Church at the time, were actually finally exterminated. Because the Catholics were frightened of what they had to say. And it's also, incidentally, where the word catharsis comes from, and also the name Catherine. So I went there carrying this with me and going into some deep reflection, got there in my van, and there was a gate that was closed. So fortunately, it's a four-wheel drive van. So I went up the next hill. That's the Chateau of Montségur. And I went about a bit to the right of where this photograph is taken from. So I was a little bit lower, but higher than where that photograph was taken. And I sat there and I felt what happened. And I was filled with a deep, deep sadness. And I stayed the night, and the next morning I thought I would just go home. I felt like I'd failed. And I went down the hill and back on to the freeway, and as I was driving back towards Italy, so this would be east, I overtook a bus that had the sign Lourdes in the window.
Oh yeah.
But it was going the wrong way. It was leaving Lourdes. It wasn't going to Lourdes. And I thought, well, Anthony, if you're going to, how can you even have hoped to write or to research anything about miracles if you don't go to Lourdes, which was about 260 kilometers the other direction. So I thought, okay, I'll give it a whack. So I turned round at the next exit and drove the 260 kilometers to Lourdes. I have to say, especially after my experience at Montségur, my level of contempt for the Catholic Church was extremely high. And I was kind of grumbling and bitching on my way there, thinking it's just spiritual tourism, there are going to be lots of souvenir shops, and it's all what the Catholic Church is all about, and this is just a disgrace. It's going to be spiritual tourism at its lowest vibration. And sure enough, as I drew into town, there were lots of buses and lots of little flags and Virgin Marys, that is, hanging in shops. And lots of little plastic bottles and big plastic containers that you could buy at an absolutely extortionate price to put water in from the spring. And so I was really quite judgmental when I parked my van and I started to walk down to the church. But I got so moved by all the people that were there. There were people from every country imaginable. I didn't know the Catholics had done quite so well. I understand there are about 1 billion of them out of 7 billion, so that's a lot. So there were Africans and Indians and French and Italians and Japanese and Irish. Every nation possible were there. And they were all in a deep state of suffering. They were all in a deep state of hope and hopelessness and helplessness. And as I walked with them, some in wheelchairs, some blind, some being carried, I felt moved and deeply shaken that I could have come to such a place with such a sense of judgment, a brittle sense of judgment, which cracked wide open and my heart just took it all. And as I got to, there's a wall down at the bottom before you get to the church, and it's a natural rock face. And over the centuries, this wall has been worn smooth by people who queue in a line and they say their prayers as they... Sorry about that. They say their prayers as they run their hands on the wall. And I was so moved, I made a pledge. I said, if my health can... If I can give my health to somebody else that's suffering, then that's what I want to do. And so I finished my visit to Lourdes and I got back in my van and I headed back to Italy. And 3 days after I got back to Italy, I was in hospital. And I don't know how many of you have heard of a friend or a relative that's been affected by the lack of cooperation between doctors or between doctors and other healers. Has anybody had that experience or knows somebody that's had that experience? So, at my age, we tend to get a little bit more concerned about what's going to happen. How are we going to deal with the disintegration of form? Those of us who don't ascend first. And so my experience was this: when I met with the head of the hospital, Italy is a very nepotistic country, and I was able to get into hospital because of a friend of a friend. And I sat with the director of San Silvestre Hospital outside Perugia, and I said to him, I'm an internal hygienist. I eat raw food, and I work from the inside outwards with my physical health. And I'm wondering if we can collaborate together, because I know that you come from the allopathic background and you have information that would be really good for me. So I'm wondering if we can work together to find a solution. And he was a kind man, and he looked at me and he said, "That's really interesting. I'm really happy to work with you." And he wrote, he was writing notes in his file, and I didn't see what he wrote until about 3 months later. But that's what he wrote. And I think he must have been talking about himself. But what that meant was that every experience I had in this journey with anybody from the allopathic world, they saw this file. So they started lying to me because they thought it was better I didn't know what was going on. I went to see about 15 doctors, and I went to see about 12 alternative practitioners. And every doctor said they wouldn't work with me if I worked with the alternative practitioners. And every alternative practitioner said they wouldn't work with me if I worked with the doctors. So I resisted doing anything and started to research on the internet as I got weaker and weaker. And eventually I got to the point where I couldn't move, and I was in bed. And I was like that for about 10 weeks in unimaginable pain. I couldn't, my fingers were like sausages, I couldn't answer a telephone, I couldn't, took me about 5 minutes to turn on the light by the bed with my elbow. And fortunately I had a friend that helped me out, and I'll just leave it like that for now, and I'm here. God bless her. So here's the story, here's what went wrong. A couple of 100 years ago, you've all heard of Louis Pasteur, I think, probably. I think there's still a Pasteur clinic in Paris. And
Yeah. Institut Pasteur.
Oui.
was it?
L'Institut Pasteur is the big
The Institut Pasteur, that's right. And in Pasteur's time, there was an argument in the medical world between him and a man called Béchamp. And Pasteur proposed to the medical community that disease began from the outside and attacked the body. Béchamp posited that disease starts at the inside and comes out. Well, Pasteur was from a wealthy family with great connections, and he actually won the argument. And that's when the separation occurred between allopathic medicine and what was called, at that time, alternative medicine. Not the other way around, like it should have been. And Pasteur, before he died, actually did go to Béchamp and confess to him that he felt Béchamp was right, that he agreed with Béchamp's theory. But nevertheless, the die was cast, and today that's the way medicine is, as a result of that separation that occurred. So it's so interesting as we sit here and we work to oneness with our breath, to look at how integration is unity and separation is duality. And we're fortunate that we're so clear about that. But in any given moment we find ourselves on a continuum between the two. I mean, we are in form, and Colin Tipping himself says the whole point of experiencing this world is to experience duality, to experience it totally at the cost of our memory of unity being our normal state of being. Oops. Okay. So I look at the process of coming into unity as community, and I look at the way that we change our position on this continuum by noticing. All we actually need to do is notice. So let's join some more dots. There's a chap called Paul Hawken who wrote this book, Blessed Unrest. I don't know if anybody's heard of him or not. For anybody from North America, he actually wrote the Whole Earth Catalogue in the 70s. He was an authentic hippie and a highly intelligent man. And on the front of his cover it says how the largest movement in the world came into being and why no one saw it coming. What he did was he measured the power of the corporate world, of government, of special interest, and he placed it on one side of the scale, and on the other side of the scale he placed the weight of the culmination. On the other side of the scale he placed the weight of the combination of all the 1 to 20 person NGOs that exist in the world.
Can you repeat this part, please?
Yeah. On one side of the balance, bilancio, he put all the world power that exists today. And on the other side of the scale, he put the combined power of NGOs, non-governmental organizations, consisting of 1 to 20 people. And the NGOs outweigh the corporate power by multifold, by many times. And a friend of mine had dinner with Paul last week and asked me if I wanted to ask a question. And the question that I asked was, what is the golden thread that weaves all of these people together? What is it that unites them and makes them a combined influence? I don't yet have an answer. I tried to reach it today. But we can look at some things that have happened in the past, and to me they're all indicators of what's going on. And they all became part of the vision that I had. I've called this the Berlin Will on purpose, but it's about the Berlin Wall. So, how could that happen? How could it happen that the Berlin Wall came tumbling down? There were no cell phones, no text messages. There was a curfew in East Berlin. You weren't even allowed to gather in groups of 2 or 3 or 4 people. People would be shot if they were close to the wall. So what happened? Because it wasn't just one moment, it was a series, it was millions of moments, and hundreds of people who weren't able to communicate with each other, but somehow everybody did exactly the right thing in the right moment for that phenomena to occur, for over 30 years of regime to fall to bits. I'm going to fast forward now to the Arab Spring. What happened there? Of course, we have the internet by this time, and we saw the Tunisian government fall, we saw the Egyptian government fall, and we see Syria, which has stifled the internet and now has over 110,000 dead. And Libya as well. And it's a strong case to say Syria is still happening because they haven't got enough oil. if we move forwards, again, just a couple of years ago, we had the phenomena of the Occupy movement, where again people gathered together to say that they noticed something was wrong. They didn't make a very strong case for what would make it right, but there was a huge mobilization of humanity to say what was wrong. And I was talking to Julie just a couple of days ago, and she was talking about the amount of rage that existed in the Occupy movement that was the cause of physical dis-ease. And all of these are dots. They're all significant. All of these incidents are significant. I posit that the Occupy movement was too conspicuous, and it was too conspicuous, visible,
Another word?
conspicuous, and it was also too confrontative. I love what people like Michael Moore have done with his films. I love what the conspiracy theorists have done to reveal what's going on, the zeitgeist. But for me, I find that if we engage on that level, that's where we stay. So I really feel gratitude to these people because they occupy that vibration and they bring attention to people who need to raise themselves into that level of awareness. So they really do work for us all. Yet I feel that the change has to come from inside out, not from outside in. So it's not about waving a flag. It's not actually about doing anything. So my question is this. What if we could create health and wealth through community? What if we could change the old paradigm by invitation instead of by confrontation? What if we could redescribe society by example rather than convincing people or salesmanship? What if we could change the world easily and joyously? And what if we could turn supply and demand the other way around and make it demand and supply? And what if we could create an environment where institutions and individuals want to be conscious? It can't be done by confrontation or re-election. It can only be done by uplifting consciousness. So what I propose is a Trojan dove, the community of healing. And it feeds itself and it nourishes itself. What it can do and what it can promote is the union of Western medicine and all other forms. And there'll be a charter of oaths that every member will swear to. So doctors will be required to sign an oath that states things like they don't take commissions from the pharmaceutical companies, that they put the patient's health before any other interests, that they commit to collaborating with all other practitioners, We can promote a database that's collected in a Wikipedia style that is open, free access. We can empower people to take responsibility for their own preventative health, and we can provide them with medical advocacy. All practitioners and suppliers can be rated by the community itself, by the members of the community itself. We can redescribe what medical insurance is. With the numbers in the community, we can ask that those who pay to work preventatively with their health pay lower premiums than those who wait till something goes wrong. We can even renegotiate with Big Pharma, with the pharmaceutical companies. We can have a complementary currency, and we have probably the greatest advisor in the world. And we can even go to the banks and renegotiate our relationships with the banks. I started a community in Italy called 1000 Seeds about 3 years ago. And 1,000 people put up 1,000 euros to buy 175 hectares in Tuscany by a hot spring close to Saturnia. It's 1 kilometer from Saturnia Hot Springs, which is an old Roman public open hot spring. And we went to the local bank and we told them we had 1,000 people that would like to open their accounts in that bank. And the bank asked my colleague, who was covered in tattoos and earrings, if he would join the board of the bank. They were so delighted. They were delighted at the prospect of having 20 million euros or so on deposit under conditions that we negotiated. That we had better rates for our credit card, we had better rates of interest on our investment, that they would make their investments ethical, and that we could vote on where the money would be invested. So these are the sorts of things we can do by coming into unity. For the practitioner, they have a shared Wikipedia-style database. So if information is out of your realm of knowledge, you can at least access it and share it. There's a friendly and responsive marketplace because people trust you. You're rated. We can introduce digital teaching, television programs, products and services, all within the community. We can establish worldwide networking, so the surgeon in New York can communicate with the Balinese Balian healer. We can cross cultures and cross professions, all in the interests of people who want to take responsibility for their health. We can stimulate and sponsor training seminars like the Breathwork Summit. How many people listened to the Breathwork Summit? There were 28,000 people connected to the Breathwork Summit last year. 28,000 people were connected over the internet to talk about breath. For the patient, he gets access, or she, gets access to cutting-edge, dedicated, ethical counsel. The patient gets access to medical advocates who can help them interpret the plethora of information that's out there They get access to forums and support groups. They get security with the health challenges or opportunities that they have. And of course they get reduced costs of insurance and care. But most of all, they get community. They get this family we've got here. Anywhere they go. So if you're traveling, you can access exactly who you need to access. We can have outreach programs, and we can reinvest in social enterprise, education, prenatal education, microfinance, charity programs which teach how to fish rather than give the fish, and philanthropy. We can support integration worldwide by example. We can distribute uncensored information for free. We can share abundance for all. And we can build strength with community. And we can create supply according to demand. We can ask for what we want. And we can create change. And none of these are new models, they all exist. I don't know how many are familiar with Avaz. They're leading right now the campaign against the young girl in the Maldives who's getting beaten for having been raped. They're leading a campaign against Monsanto, which is gathering pace. And when you go there to click your signature on the petition, you can see the flags and the other signatures that are clicking. And this is a model that the IBF can share too. Because my mantra is 5 to the power of 10. And does anybody have an idea what 5 to the power of 10 is?
5 zeros.
What it means is, if you take, I'm going to put it immediately into context, if you take 5 people, if I can ask 5 people to join this community, and those 5 people go and ask 5 other people to join this community, and that replicates 10 times. Do you have any idea how many people that is? Would anybody like to guess?
2,000.
9.7 million people. Yeah. Thank you all. And if you have any questions, please ask them. For now, you can join on the Facebook group page, which is Community of Healing Group. And there's also a Community of Healing page. And if any of you are practitioners, we'd welcome you to also give us a profile about who you are. And I've really just given you a skeleton about this in order to be able to do it in time, but it's flourishing so beautifully. There's so much that's wonderful. We would love every practitioner to give us a 30-second video of them speaking from their passion. We have already some amazing professionals that are joining us. We have the man that invented Humulin, Dr. Riaz, who's a professor of neurology at Berkeley University.
What is
Humulin, which was the replacement for bovine insulin. We're getting some key people. We'll be reaching out really, I think, very effectively to get key people who we wish to make mentors. I'm so excited. Thank you. So please go get 5 people to join, and just be patient with us. And anybody who wants to take any kind of a leading role in this, please just say so.
Thanks for watching. And what I'd love you to do now is to join the Facebook group and bring us your ideas, things that you'd like to share. Maybe you have concerns about medicine, or maybe you have information. Maybe you're a health practitioner, alternative or traditional. In any event, we'd love you to join us, only if you want to. This isn't about persuading you to do anything, but if you feel that there's something that you can bring to community, please make a point of letting us know. And get your profiles ready, because we'll be taking them very shortly. Thanks so much for coming. Aloha.